Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ana Silvia Torres, and I'm a librarian here at LA County Library, and I'll be your host for today's program, Master Your Job Search with Jenny Foss. I also want to talk a little bit about the Work Ready program. So Work Ready is a program that is designed to help our patrons with any of their job or career needs, such as helping you with your resumes, your cover letters, or programs like this by mastering your job search. We also have laptops and wireless hotspot kits that you can check out from participating libraries, and you can check those out for 6 weeks, and you can write your cover letters, your resumes, applies for jobs, all kinds of things. And I will post links, and also all of the information that we share today will be sent in the follow-up email. So don't worry about anything that I mentioned. You will definitely get that information. We also, as I mentioned, do weekly programs or semi-weekly programs with experts in their fields that are designed to help you learn a new skill. If you're trying to learn something for your business or for a promotion, all kinds of events and topics we cover in our Work Ready live sessions. We also have ebooks and audiobooks for you to check out, and also physical books that you can go and check out at many of our different libraries. And that is the Work Ready program. And we have many, many new programs coming up. And I'll talk about our next upcoming program at the end of the event. Now it's time to get started with today's event, Master Your Job Search with Jenny Foss. Really excited to work with Jenny. We worked with her with our last session, and we had a really great participation. So we brought her back on to help you master your job search. And let me tell you a little bit about Jenny. Jenny Foss is a longtime recruiter, internationally recognized career coach, and the voice behind the popular career website, jobjenny.com. She's also a certified professional resume writer and works one-on-one with hundreds of clients each year, helping them package and market their professional capabilities in a way that supports their goals and generates amazing results. You can see Jenny in action over on the LinkedIn Learning platform. Her self-paced video courses help job seekers navigate everything from resume writing to understanding recruiters to answering the most common interview questions. And she just wrote a book. So be sure to check out her soon-to-launch book, Do This, Not That: Career, What to Do and Not to Do in 75 plus difficult workplace situations. It's available for pre-order on most major retail websites, including Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and Target. Without further ado, let me welcome Jenny to the platform, and you're all in for a treat. So welcome, Jenny. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. It looks like we got a pretty good sized group here today. So hey, LA County and otherwise for anyone else who's logged in. I'm going to take just a quick second here and get my screen share available. And yeah, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A. I am going to pause a few times in the actual presentation to address questions that are coming in. And then certainly we'll have some time at the end of the presentation too. So bring on those questions. All right, here we go. Let's get this opened up. All right, well, I am guessing that everyone is here today because you're either actively looking for a new job or preparing to. So either way, I am willing to bet that you'll agree with me when I say that this is pretty much no one's favorite activity. In fact, in 15 or so years that I've been doing this, I have yet to meet somebody who's all like, yes, it's time to look for a new job. I mean, it just doesn't happen. Now, don't get me wrong. I have worked with a number of people who actually are excited about, oops, I'm going too far in my preso here. I've worked with a lot of people who are excited about a fresh start or something more challenging or moving up to become a manager or whatever. But the actual process, it can be really challenging. And it can be confusing, and it can be time consuming. So why is job search so hard? I mean, I could go on and on about this one, but we'll cover a few things first. So job search is hard for a lot of reasons. One is maybe you really don't know what you're looking for. What do you want to do next? So it's hard to look for a job when you don't know what it is you're looking for. Maybe the tactics that you're using, and this is really common with the clients that we work with, they're just not working, but you're not sure why. Or maybe you're super busy and you're finding it hard to carve out enough time to really focus on job search. Or maybe you don't know how to network, or you hate LinkedIn, or you find rejection really difficult, because I do not know a single person who doesn't think rejection is the pits. So this is some tough stuff. So in the words of the great Simon Sinek, the hardest part of all of this is just getting started. And for those who have started, if you're off to the wrong start, then we're going to try and work today to kind of put you on a better path, get you restarted. And once you start gaining momentum, hopefully the rest of this journey for all of you is going to start feeling at least a little easier, and hopefully quite a bit easier. So a really important step before you get racing out of the gates with job search, it's not writing your resume. And that's what a lot of people tend to think of needs to be the very first step in their process. And yes, having a powerful resume is important. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. But the first step to all of this is defining your target job. It's going to be really hard for you to show up as a compelling candidate for any job if you aren't clear on what you want to do in the first place. I mean, you can't leave that up to other people to figure out. Now, this does not mean that you have to get down to this just granular level, but you're going to do yourself a tremendous favor if you at least create a ballpark definition around what you want to do next. And so I have a few exercises that will help you define that target audience. So the very biggest thing that I would recommend, and we'll talk in more detail on this as we work through the presentation today, is informational interviews. Done well, informational interviews can just be a goldmine for you in helping you figure out what field you want to be in, what specific job you want to target. You can get a firsthand account of people working in different jobs that might be of interest to you. You can talk with people about what skills are going to be really important if you are to target that job. So I can't emphasize enough, and I'm going to emphasize it more in a few minutes, the importance of meeting people who may be great allies to you through your job search and who may be willing and able to open some doors for you. Another way to start figuring out your target job is, well, let me ask you this. I guess show of hands, or maybe just a little response in the chat. Who out there is already using job boards like LinkedIn, Indeed, FlexJobs, ZipRecruiter when you're looking for jobs to apply for? I'm guessing it's a lot of people. Yes. Very typical, most everyone. And I'm guessing that when you look for jobs using the job boards, you probably enter job titles into the search box. Am I correct on that? So if you're not sure what your target job is, it's kind of hard to put job titles in that search box. So what you might want to do instead, or in addition to guessing on job titles, is this: try entering phrases or keywords that you think might be in a job description that's going to appeal to you into that search box, because it's going to read the whole job description. You don't have to just use a job title. So here's an example. So say I'm someone who loves coming into an organization like on the ground floor and helping build up the company. And then maybe I'm hoping to put my Spanish speaking skills to use in that next job. But I'm not sure what the job is going to be called, because I'm sure you realize this, there are lots and lots of job titles out there. So here's what I could do. I'm going to try entering Spanish into the search box, and maybe a phrase like building a team, or starting on the ground floor, or navigating ambiguity, because when you're in a new environment, there's lots of navigating ambiguity. And then guess what? I might find a few great options for jobs first that I actually want to apply for. But also important, I'm going to see the job titles for the jobs that come up over and over again. And that might help me fine tune my search once I start realizing like, I didn't realize that project manager were jobs that I should be looking for. So it can help you kind of fine tune how you're searching. Another activity I recommend is called Analyze 5. So try and find 5 job descriptions that you find super interesting. And I mean, these can be in any town. They could be expired listings that maybe you've saved on your computer. For the purpose of this exercise, it doesn't matter. The goal is to find 5 job descriptions that interest you and align with your skills, your education, your experience. And what I would do with those is lay those out side by side, or side by side on your computer screen, and see what the most common overlapping qualifications or requirements are. Because there will be patterns in those job descriptions for sure. So what skills are these jobs asking you to have over and over again? What are the jobs called? What types of companies are they with? So again, try to find the patterns so you can narrow in on what that job is, what type of organization you should be looking at, or what specific companies are on your short list of companies you really want to work for. And then the last idea before we move on, if you're not sure about what you want to do next, I would try creating a dream job description. Like craft your own, like the perfect job description. And again, what will you be doing? What skills will you be putting to use? Will you manage a team? Will you be doing something that allows you to use your advanced Excel skills or programming robots? What sounds amazing and realistic based on your background and your goals? So once you have that ideal crafted, you can then be on the lookout for jobs that share some of the similarities with that masterpiece job description. All right, strategize and plan. So once you've built that ballpark definition around what your next job is going to be, what that target is, you can then build a job search strategy around that and plan some activities that align with that plan. So this is a huge step. This is a very important step and something that a lot of people don't do at the front end. But planning is so important with job search, because if you bypass it, you're probably going to end up frustrated because you're just spinning your wheels. You're sitting at your computer aimlessly surfing around without really knowing what your objective is and what you're sitting down to do on any given day that you're using time for your job search. So here's how I would start the planning process. So I would create something called an intention statement, which I know sounds very intention statement, very official, but it's going to be extremely helpful for you if you can figure out what exactly you're going for and how you need to spend your time so that you're moving forward toward that goal. So an intention statement is pretty simple. It's a short yet specific statement that outlines with clarity what you're aiming for, how you're intending to get there, and in what amount of time you plan to make it happen. So I'll throw one out there. By March of next year, I will be working as a program analyst for a global nonprofit that provides humanitarian aid. So to achieve that, I will conduct informational interviews with at least 3 people working in this field. I'm going to serve as a volunteer for Doctors Without Borders. And I'm going to ask my human rights professor if she'll make some introductions for me. By the way, professors, especially if you're early career or you're back in school or recently out of a second degree, they are sometimes very connected and very willing to make those introductions. So anyway, that's just an example, but hopefully it shows you how useful an intention statement can be. So you set the goal and outline the big picture things that are going to help you get to that goal in whatever amount of time that you establish for yourself. And then next, you are going to want to plan some activities around that goal. I would just really sit down and brainstorm. Just get out a piece of paper or open up a file on your computer and think about all the things that you can do that will support you in getting there. A few that I would recommend are right on the screen here. Who do you want to meet? What companies do I want to research? Do I need to update my resume? Obviously, same goes for the LinkedIn profile. Are there any networking events that I could put on my calendar and show up to with the hopes of meeting people that would be beneficial to what I want to do? Do I need to meet some recruiters? Do I want to ask someone if I can job shadow them so I can get a feel for what day in the life of that actual job is? And then obviously the last one is what probably everyone on the call knows how to do: apply for jobs online. So by planning activities, this way you can slot these into your week in those open spots that you reserve for yourself for job search. And you don't end up on, say, a Tuesday night just sitting there doing this, not really moving forward toward your goal. So planning these activities and then scheduling them into your week can be really helpful in keeping you focused and moving forward with your job search. Okay, now it is time for us to shift into talking about the paperwork. But Anna Sylvia, before we go there, are there any, we probably have time for a couple of questions. Are there any that kind of align with where we've gone so far?
Yeah, we have a few. And just a reminder to everyone to please put your questions in the Q&A. So we have one that sort of is aligned with what you talked about, maybe the intention statement. And so Christina would like to know, what do you think is a reasonable time goal?
That's a great question. And it's also a very personal question based on, I mean, the economics of your situation are probably going to drive that in some regard, but also the field that you're in, the level that you're at. So if I'm a vice president of a company, I should probably anticipate that there's going to be a longer timeline than if I'm a data analyst, largely because the search process for those higher level, more executive roles tend to be lengthier processes. Also, if you need any credentials, like if you need to enroll in an Excel course before you start applying for these jobs. So a lot of different variables at play, but really thinking through, like, in order for me to get to this point, all these things that need to happen, and then setting that goal. But of course, I'm cognizant that if you're running out of money, you're going to want to make that as short as timeline as possible, and just work hard to build time into your week to make this happen. Strategic time.
Mhm. Great. Okay, let me see what else we have. So this is kind of a very, very personal kind of question. So maybe, just see how this particular person might approach this. But if they're maybe older and have no marketable skills and no recent job experiences, so they would have no meaningful references, how would they be able to maybe approach your suggestion for reaching out to people for references? You mentioned professors, but and I guess maybe general for everybody, what's a good way that people can reach out?
Very good question. We are going to talk more about that as we move forward, but I'll give a sneak preview. It's really about finding people who might be willing to have a conversation with you, even if you are a stranger, approaching them thoughtfully and strategically. And again, we'll talk about that in just a bit, and being really mindful of their time. And then using that conversation to hopefully as leverage to get more introductions. But yes, sit tight. We'll go there next. Well, not quite next, but coming up. And Anna Sylvia, if you're ready, I'm going to start talking about the paperwork.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. Okay, so when I say paperwork, this is your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, and really any other support materials that you plan to use as you market yourself for whatever that position is that you want to land. And again, I would not do the resume before you have an idea of what job or jobs you're targeting. And here's why. Your resume is a marketing document. It's designed to prompt a purchase decision. And in this case, that purchase decision is invite you into an interview. And so realize you're not creating an autobiography here. Doesn't need to be a list of everything that you've ever done. And that's particularly important for those of us who are getting more experienced in our careers. This is a marketing campaign, and your resume is going to be the centerpiece of that campaign. So I'm going to start there first, and we're going to talk about the 4 elements of a winning resume. So here is how I construct resumes for my clients. And again, I have been a certified professional resume writer for many years. So this is a framework that I know works, and it's one that I'll recommend if you plan to either create a new resume or edit your existing one. So first, I would create a summary section at the top of your resume that tells the reviewer who you are professionally and why you think they should pay attention to you. So I'll talk about that in a second, but this is a really great opportunity to introduce yourself and your overarching value proposition with your target role in mind. So again, you want to construct this in a way that speaks to the decision makers at the job you want next. So aligning your summary section with your understanding of what those recruiters are going to be on the lookout for. So let me give you an example of this. Okay, so say I'm doing my Analyze 5 and I'm seeing strong problem solving skills in the job descriptions that I'm targeting, like it's coming up over and over again. Well, then in my summary section of my resume, it'll be important for me to introduce myself as, among other things, a strong problem solver. So that's just a really simple example, but my summary needs to say, hey, I am what you're looking for to the best of your ability. So that, again, that goes back to the closer you can be at defining what you want, the easier it becomes to introduce yourself in a way that's going to really resonate. All right, next is key skills. Adding a key skills section or areas of expertise, whatever you want to call it, it's important for the recruiter who's looking at your resume so they can get a quick glimpse at the stuff that you know how to do. And it's also important for the resume scanning software, which is called the Applicant Tracking System, or the ATS. The scanning software will be on the lookout for whatever keywords or key skills the recruiter has told that software to prioritize. So for this reason, I'd create that key skills section in your resume, because obviously it provides you an easy way to embed those and make it very visually clear to that reviewer. And I do want to mention, for anyone on this workshop, in the workshop today, who has LinkedIn Learning, access to LinkedIn Learning, which comes with LinkedIn Premium, I actually have a course on LinkedIn Learning called Optimize Your Resume for Applicant Tracking Systems. And I'll show a link at the end of this presentation. But that might be something to check out if you do have questions about how the resume scanning software works. Okay, the third element of a winning resume is that it shows some supporting evidence. So let's go back to the strong problem-solving skills, which I'm showcasing in my summary section. It's one thing for you to introduce yourself as a strong problem solver, but can you also show me an example of a problem that you've solved in one of the jobs that you've held or while you were in college on a project? If you can, be sure and share that as a bullet point in the experience section or underneath your education section on your resume. So again, it's one thing for me to say, hello, I'm Jenny Foss. I'm an excellent problem solver. Great, Jenny, nice to meet you. Show us a problem that you've solved. So that's where you have the opportunity to add supporting evidence. And last, I want to talk about strategically formatting your resume. And even though I don't have time today for a deep dive into this, I do want to encourage everybody on the call to use some strategy in how you lay out your resume. So, for instance, if you don't yet have, say, I'm guessing there are a few people on this call who are preparing for a career pivot. And if you don't yet have experience in the field that you're trying to enter, but maybe you just finished a degree in that exact same thing, I would list the education section before your experience section on your resume so that the eyeballs go right to that relevant bit of knowledge that you have or background. I would also use thoughtful use of bold and bullet points so that you're making it very easy for the reader's eyes to see the things that you most want them to see and see them quickly. And speaking of LinkedIn Learning, I have a course on LinkedIn Learning called Resume Makeover for anyone interested in kind of walking your way step by step through my process for resume development. And again, I'll link it at the end of the presentation. And I think Anna Sylvia is going to send out or make the presentation available after today. Power tips for your LinkedIn profile. So we got a lot of people on this call. So let's talk about LinkedIn. Are you all on it? And if so, are you using it? And what exactly do you use it for? Like, what do you do on LinkedIn? And if you want to drop that into the chat, let's take a break. So I could talk all day about LinkedIn. It is far and away. I'm probably showing, hold on a second. My chat's probably up on the screen for you guys. It's far and away our most powerful tool for professional branding, researching researching employers, researching interviewers. reaching out to people, applying for jobs. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So I'm going to share just a few fundamental tips about LinkedIn. So number one, and I know I'm going to start sounding like a broken record with this, speak to your most important audience when you set up or modify your LinkedIn profile. And think about that audience when you post anything, when you share anything. I would say for most of the people here today, your most important audience right now is probably recruiters and hiring managers. So what do these people need to know about you the moment they click into your profile? Next, be intentional in branding yourself. So this kind of builds on what I just said. So just like with your resume, you want to treat your LinkedIn profile as a marketing tool versus just, hey, I'm dumping everything in here and you can figure me out. Rather than just posting any random thing or adding a link or an attachment to your profile without really giving it much thought, I would apply some strategy. So does this article that I'm about to share support my brand, how I want people to perceive me? If I add this link to my profile, is this something that's going to help people better understand my capabilities? So be thoughtful with that. Third is open yourself up to recruiters. So again, if you want to throw it in the chat, how many of you are already using LinkedIn's open to work feature? So if you don't already know about open to work, it's an option on LinkedIn that allows you to tell recruiters, okay, good, got a couple, allows you to tell recruiters that use LinkedIn Premium Recruiter. So it's only recruiters who pay to have access to this premium membership that you're open to being contacted. And you can set it up. You can set up what types of jobs you're targeting, what geographies you're thinking about. Do you want a remote or hybrid job? Are you okay with going into the office full time? So be sure and set this up for yourself so that recruiters will know what you want and that you're eager for them to reach out. And a quick note on that, you do have an option with LinkedIn's open to work feature to alert only recruiters, or you can alert everyone who comes to your profile. And you've probably seen this. If you choose everyone, you're going to get that green swoosh around your photo that says hashtag open to work. So it does make it more prominent, which can be great because recruiters want to know if you're looking, and certainly people in your network might be helpful if they see that, but don't use that feature if you are secretively going about your job search, because you certainly don't want the green swoosh around your picture if you're currently employed and don't want your employer to know that. And then my last tip about LinkedIn is use it. This isn't a billboard. It's not a tattoo. This is a social media designed to facilitate conversation and interaction. And honestly, the more you interact with people, the more you personally will probably get out of it. But also the LinkedIn search algorithm rewards you for more interaction. So you will probably turn up in more searches, have better engagement rates. So you might notice that if you do pay attention to your LinkedIn stats. Now we are going
Hey, Jenny.
Yes.
Before we move on from LinkedIn, I just
Yep.
want to let our audience know that we actually offer LinkedIn Learning through our databases. So if you have a LA County Library card with us, then you can use it for free and you can take some of Jenny's classes. So we'll leave information for that as well in the follow-up email.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely take advantage of that. We also have some LinkedIn classes on our YouTube channel. So we'll make sure to to plug all of that in the follow-up email. And then
That's
we do have,
wonderful.
yeah, it's a really great resource. And we do have one question about LinkedIn.
Sure.
So do hiring managers really look at certificates gained through trainings and volunteer work? What do you think?
I think that's my answer is kind of like, it depends. Certainly it's not going to hurt you to add any kind of education that you have on software or credentials that you've earned that aren't necessarily a degree, because it will make it known that you are probably proactively working to enhance your skills, which is never a bad thing. If it is a job that full on requires a certain degree and you don't have the degree, but you do have a certification, or you went through an online course, I mean, you may be bumped out, but I am certainly always one to say, if you think you're 70-ish% a fit, take a run at it. I mean, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't apply. So that was my kind of non-answer answer. I have on that note, though, heard from a group of recruiters that I pay close attention to over on Twitter. LinkedIn allows you to do like a skills test now. I don't know that recruiters put that much stock into the results of your LinkedIn skills test. So I just maybe wouldn't get too wrapped up in that feature on LinkedIn.
Good to know. Yeah, I know LinkedIn has so many bells and whistles on it. I haven't been on it in a while, but I'm sure I'll be overwhelmed when I log back in and see everything.
They do. A lot of them are good.
Yeah.
And, I recognize that I am a partner with LinkedIn, so I'm a little bit biased, but I mean, it is an unbelievable tool if you can kind of get moving with it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Are we ready?
Yes.
All right, let's keep moving. Now we're at the part where we were talking about earlier with networking. So here's something I know does not come easily to a lot of people. So I definitely want to spend a little bit of time on it. There are a lot of ways you can network. I'm going to talk about two that tend to work pretty well for job seekers. So again, we're going to take a deeper dive into informational interviews, and I want to talk about something I call a networking letter. All right, moving on. I'm ignoring my slides here. So the first thing to know about informational interviews is this: they're not job interviews. If they were job interviews, they'd be called job interviews. They are informational interviews, and they are designed to help you gather information about jobs or companies of interest, to learn more about people in industries that you're targeting, and with luck, build relationships that are going to be helpful to you as you work to land this next job or a future job. So I want to offer a few quick tips on how to make the most out of an informational interview. And the first one is so important. When you reach out to someone for an informational interview, just be really authentic about it. Try and demonstrate genuine curiosity in that person and in their work. The more curious you are and interested in them, the better the odds are they're going to want to talk with you. Next, you want to make it super, super easy for them to say yes. So be brief, but specific when you reach out with your request. So say you're cold emailing someone that you don't know through LinkedIn, like an InMail. Or even a warm lead, like if somebody knows so-and-so and said, hey, you should reach out to them. So maybe I say something like, hey, I'm Jenny Foss. I'm really interested in working in the area of sustainability or green tech. And I noticed the work you're doing at XYZ company. Would love to know a little bit more about it. Might you be willing to jump on a call in the coming week or so and talk about your work? Or might you be willing to spend 15 minutes chatting with me in the next couple of weeks? So I actually too, now that we're talking about LinkedIn Learning, going to LinkedIn, I have a newsletter on LinkedIn called Steer Your Career, which you can subscribe to if you're interested. But I think it was just last month, I focused on informational interviews with very specific tips on how to reach out and scripts. So that might be something you want to check out if you want to try your hand at informational interviews. My third tip is, and this one should be obvious, arrive with questions. That's not their responsibility. You're the interviewer. So I could say, hey, you know what, tell me a little bit more about your work with artificial intelligence, or what do you love most about your job? Or what skills does your company seem to really value in the people that they hire? So just don't show up and then sit there and wait for the other person to do the talking, because you've actually invited them. So it could be a little weird. Next, be mindful of their time. Like if somebody agrees to 15 minutes, don't try and squeeze 45 minutes out of them. I mean, if the conversation's going really well, and you know you're coming up on the time that they've agreed to, maybe you say, hey, I want to be super mindful of your time. I know we planned for 15 minutes. Do you have time for one more question? So usually they'll say yes, but if they can't, if they've got a meeting or something they've got to get to, you're giving them the opportunity to gracefully exit the call and not feel kind of stuck. And then tip number 5 is, when you wrap up that conversation, here's what I would say, something like this. Hey, Anna Sylvia, this has been a great discussion. I really appreciate your time. Listen, can you think of 1 or 2 other people I might want to introduce myself to? So this is a great way to keep that momentum going and potentially meet other people that might be useful to your job search. And then finally, if you do an informational interview with someone and they offer you a piece of advice that you go after the call and you deploy and it works, I would absolutely loop around back to them and share the success with them. Tell them, hey, we talked a month ago and you suggested I do X. I want to tell you how great that advice was because this is what happened. People really love it when they feel like they've been helpful, and it will also create another touch point for you to have with that person. So that also can be valuable in terms of building a relationship with somebody in your industry who might be an ally. Okay, another great tool for networking is something that I call the networking letter, which I know is a very original title. Eureka, I've got a name for this. So here's the gist of a networking letter. Right now, all of you have people around you that know you, that like you, that love you, that would be very willing to support you. But if they don't really understand how they can best help you or best support you, odds are that they're not going to be doing anything for you. So you could say, hey, Jenny, could you keep an eye out for me? I might say yes, because I really care about you. But if I don't have any idea of what I'm keeping an eye out for, guess what I'm going to be doing? Probably nothing. So this is where your networking letter comes in. And I say a letter, but this could be an email, an in-mail. It could be talking points if you guys are going to meet for a drink or coffee. But the premise is the same. So in the networking letter, you begin by explaining why you're getting in touch with that person in the first place and what's happening for you. So here's an example of how you might start that. Hey, Anna Sylvia, as you might have heard, I was laid off as part of that big Peloton restructure. I'm looking for a new role and I'm hoping you can help. So that's a pretty simple and straightforward start to that. And then next, you want to outline for that person what it is you're looking for. And I would, again, be as specific as you can. So maybe you say, these are the types of jobs I'm targeting, or these are the skills I really want to put to use in my next job. Maybe it's, I'm really targeting this industry or these industries, and here are some companies that I'm particularly interested in. So if you can paint a picture for your people of what you're envisioning and what you're a fit for, they're going to be best equipped to support you. So then once you paint that picture, now you shift into the here's how you can help me part of that networking letter. So maybe you say something like, if you know of any current or upcoming job opportunities that align with what I've just described, or maybe know someone working in this field or at these specific companies, I'd be really grateful if you could alert me of it or make an introduction. And then likewise, if I can return the favor going forward, I would be more than happy to do that. So that's your number 4 here on the slide. Is obviously you want to make sure and thank them for any support they're willing to give you. So again, don't just ask your friends or your family members to keep an eye out for you. Make sure and help them understand precisely how they can support you. Because I don't know if you're like me, I have friends who have these great jobs and I know what the job is called. Like, oh, you're a, data analyst, or you're a usability specialist, but I don't really know what they get up and do in their jobs. So if those people came and asked for help, I don't know that I would know what to look for. All right, we are at the point where you're going to land an interview. And now we're going to talk about how you're going to nail the interview once you land it. So here are a few of my best tips when it comes to succeeding in an interview. I think I'm behind on my, there we go. So once you've landed an interview, obviously there's plenty that you're going to want to do to prepare yourself for it. So here's where I'd begin and kind of the steps I'd take from there. So number 1, assuming you've got like a recruiter or a point person who's coordinating the interview, ask that person who you're going to be meeting and what that person's function is. So some recruiters are just going to tell you right up front, but if they don't, be sure and ask the recruiter or your point person, whoever that is, so that you can do some research on that person or the people ahead of the meeting, and you can then make some guesses on what they're going to be most focused on. So for instance, if your interview is a phone screen with a recruiter, that's probably going to just be a quick, maybe 15 to 30-minute call to determine if you're a strong enough candidate to move on to a second interview with the hiring manager. Whereas if they schedule you to talk with the director of finance, you can bet that that person is going to be asking you questions with financials in mind, right? Director of HR is going to be asking you questions with kind of the human aspect in mind. So get the download on who you're going to be talking to, because it will make it a lot easier for you to prepare if you have that info. And then next, I would ask your point person for some tips on how you can put your best foot forward. I think sometimes people get nervous about this, but it's important to know that recruiters want you to succeed. Their entire job is to find great people who ultimately get hired to fill open positions. And so they have every incentive to arm you with tips and pointers and help you prepare so that you can put your best foot forward. So don't be afraid to ask them if they have any kind of best advice for how to talk to so-and-so. The third tip, and I know this is a little bit cliche, but do your homework. Study the people or person you're going to interview with, research the company, see if you can find some recent news about the company or insights about the industry. This is going to help you come up with thoughtful questions during the conversation. And honestly, it also just confirms like that you cared enough about this opportunity to do that exploration in advance. You're not just out wallpapering the universe with resumes and showing up for anything, even if you are, which is understandable sometimes if you need a job, but you want to make them realize that you're being intentional. Next tip, and I realize that most people get pretty nervous about interviews, but try and remember that the person across from you, they're just a human. I mean, just like you, just like me. I mean, we get up, we have bad breath, my hair is everywhere every morning. And so try and view this interview as an opportunity to have an interesting conversation to the extent you can, versus this question, answer, like a tennis match. Chances are, if you can do that, it's going to be easier for you and a much more enjoyable experience for both of you. And then finally, make sure and send an immediate thank you after your interview. And if you talk to more than one person, I would send a custom thank you to each one email. And when you do, just touch on something that you talked about in the chat that maybe was particularly memorable. And assuming you want to move on in the process, let them know you're excited about potential next steps. And I do recommend that you get that thank you out, if you can, on the same day. No later than the following day. All right, this is a question that we all love and turns up a lot when you're interviewing. So, Anna Sylvia, tell me about yourself. It's the question that's not even a question, by the way, but it turns up so often, I think we should talk a little bit about it. So, what exactly are people looking for when they ask this question? So what they want to do is get an understanding of who you are professionally and personally, and then get a feel for how strong of a fit you are for the position that you're interviewing for. So there are plenty of ways that you can answer this question. I'm going to share my take on it. So first, understand that they are not asking you to take them on a guided tour of your resume. Okay, well, back in 2004, I was this and blah, blah, blah. You don't have to go line by line through your resume. They can read. They surely have read your resume. Certainly if there's something you want to touch on as you answer the question, fine. But this is not your time to read your entire resume back to them. Instead, what I recommend is that you think about what traits and skills are most important for this job, and then introduce yourself in a way that aligns with that. So this would be an example of how I might answer that question. As a career coach, and I know that they're looking for someone with inventive thinking and strong problem-solving skills, which that would be very normal with a career coach job description. So maybe when they ask me, tell me about yourself, maybe I introduce myself like this. I've always been super curious. I guess I wouldn't be that casual, but I remember all the way back to grade school. So my friend had this amazing pinball machine and I wanted it so bad, but I couldn't convince my parents to buy me one. This was like an arcade pinball machine. So I had a problem to solve. I began collecting odds and ends that I would find around the house, in the backyard, at school, screws, bolts, interesting pieces of plastic, you name it. And I was collecting them in a box under my bed. This, by the way, is a true story. So 8-year-old Jenny's plan was to build the pinball machine that my parents wouldn't buy for me. And I was dead serious. I had this thing named, I had drawings of it. Now, ultimately, I did not build the pinball machine, but I did stay curious. And I have always been really good at problem solving. And that's exactly why I became a career coach. The thing I love best about this field is every individual has a problem, and we work together to kind of come up with a unique and executable plan that's going to lead to their success. So, and then you can go on to describe the things that you've done, maybe, in your recent career that align with that core theme. So tell your interview a story as you answer that question, a story about you. It does not have to be the weird pinball story, but I mean, something that helps them see who you are professionally and personally all in one, and is also aligned with the job that you're pursuing. Okay, we are getting close to the job offer. So let's talk about negotiation. I recognize that negotiating is something a lot of people feel really nervous about or awkward with when it comes time to negotiate. So much so, I think plenty of people shortchange themselves and don't negotiate at all. But unless a company, as they present the offer, comes right out and says, this is our top offer, or we don't have any room to move, you probably have room for negotiation. Companies don't often just throw out their absolute best number right away. And so if you decide that you want to negotiate an offer, how do you decide if and what to do? So there's really not a simple answer to, should you or should you not negotiate? I mean, there's a lot of factors involved. What are your goals? What does the market bear? Do you feel like the skills that you bring in merit more? Did they completely lowball you? But here are a few signs that it could be worth your while. So first is, do you have a written offer? So I would not start negotiating until you have this. Verbal offers are terrific, but until you have the terms spelled out in front of you in writing, I would hold off. And then second, can you clarify you're worth more than has been offered? And yes, I know this comes down to having some confidence in your skills, in your experience, really having knowledge what the market will bear. So I would do your research. But what are you going to be bringing to this organization that is going to be incredibly valuable and could merit that extra compensation? And then another consideration is, are you going to decline the offer if this is the final offer? So if that's a yes, you literally have nothing to lose by putting together a thoughtful proposal for them to consider. And then last, I would for sure consider negotiating if you are one of the lucky ones who are in a very high demand field right now. I mean, companies in some fields are really scrambling to fill open positions. And so what that means is it's a candidate's market right now in some fields, and you hold more of the cards than they do. I mean, like some tech sector roles, healthcare, education, supply chain. So if you're in demand, it may very well be worth your while to negotiate an offer. Listen, you've landed the job. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how to step into that new role in a way that really sets you off strong. Not perfect, mind you. I'm not saying perfect, but you want to walk in, really ready ready to roll. Oops, I'm going too far. Sorry. So this just a few tips. I mean, obviously introduce yourself to people when you go in, whether that's virtual go in or in person, and work really hard to remember names. I mean, that's something that goes a long way. I always remember the people who never can get my name right, which is weird because my name is Jenny. It's not all that hard. And likewise, I appreciate people who, when I don't know them very well, they already remember my name. I would also ask some curious questions of your colleagues, so you can start getting a lay of the land, getting to know people. I mean, I would avoid super personal questions, but ask questions. Meet with your manager so you can know what the expectations are during those first few weeks and months on the job. Spend time observing. You really want to digest how people interact. You know, what do various teams and people do? What's the kind of social dynamic? Who seems to be really interesting and nice? And, you know, are there cliques that you should probably stay away from? Just spend some time paying attention to those things. And then, I mean, this sounds silly, but take good care of yourself. Those first weeks, even if you're excited about your job, are going to be a little bit stressful. So eat well, get enough sleep, stay hydrated. You want to fuel your body so that you're really ready. And then again, remember, nobody's expecting you to be perfect. We have all been there starting a new job, and we all know that it's weird and awkward, and we don't want to look stupid, and it's stressful to not know where the bathroom is if you're on site somewhere. So, go easy on yourself. Nobody's going to be perfect. And then finally, when you do start your new job, I really hope that you will give yourself a huge, huge high five. Job search is super challenging. It often takes longer than you want it to. And so I just want to say, if you make a plan and keep showing up every day, every week, and working that plan and fine tuning, getting rid of the things that aren't working, adding strategies that seem to be working, it'll happen. It will absolutely happen. And when it does, make sure that you congratulate yourself. Okay, well, that's what I have for now. I do see that we have some questions. So Anna Sylvia, do you want to drive the questions?
Sure. That was some really great advice. I would have appreciated hearing this when I got started in my career journey. So I hope that everyone who's listening felt like something stood out for them, and they can take that with them in their job search.
Thank you.
We do have quite a few questions, and so I apologize in advance because we probably won't get to all of them just due to time constraints. But there are a few on the job negotiation, so maybe we can start there.
Yeah,
Lexine would like to know, does the advice that most companies expect negotiation of offers apply only to private sector jobs, or do you think it applies across to the public and nonprofit sectors?
Public sector, they often have kind of a stated range right there in the job description. So I would imagine that I wouldn't go into that negotiation expecting you're going to go past whatever the cap of that range is. They're usually pretty structured ranges. I think nonprofit, it really depends on how they're set up and what their budgets are. I wouldn't say you can't negotiate in nonprofit. Again, if they say we're at the top of our range, we've worked really hard to get you this as our most competitive offer, you might want to use some care. But I think in general, organizations are prepared for thoughtful negotiation. I say thoughtful because you don't want to just go in and say, I want a nicer apartment, so I need more money. I mean, not that anyone on this call would do that, but you got to make it about them. What value are they going to get? And what's the basis of your ask? if they are willing to consider that.
That's great advice. Also, since you recommend not negotiating until you have a written offer, would you say that you should also make your counter offer in writing as well?
I mean, you could do it, you know, like in tandem. You could say, if you have a call scheduled, say, I've just emailed you over a quick note or a quick proposal outlining, and you could say, you know, I always encourage the sandwich technique with negotiations. So the first piece of bread is, I'm excited about this, really looking forward to joining the company. I think we're close. The meat is the ask. What I'd really love, if you're willing to consider, is a base salary of $95K. Here's where I'm coming from with that. And then the other piece of bread is, if we can finalize this, I would be really grateful. And again, I'm so excited about this opportunity. I think this is going to be a great team, blah, blah, blah. So the meat is the ask.
And similar to that, once let's say someone's been offered the job, they started it, do you recommend negotiating after, maybe once they've started, or that should all be taken care of before any of that?
Yeah, it's harder to do. You get in and say yes, and then you're like, well, this is more work than I thought. I want more money. I mean, that's hard to do. I would say the one thing that you might do that's sort of in this ballpark is, if you're going to take the job and you know that it's not quite what you want, but you want to give it a shot, you want to take a run at it, you could ask your future employer, could we build some wording into the offer that would say, I'll be evaluated at, say, the 90-day mark, and if I'm doing X, Y, and Z, you know, there could be a bump in salary considered, or something like that. But yeah, it's a lot harder to negotiate after you've said yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Right, let's switch gears a little bit, and maybe if there's time, we can go to some of those other negotiating questions. So this is about what you the section where you talked about preparing for the interview. How would you organically, Gabriella would like to know, how do you use background research to bring up organically in an interview?
That's a great question. So you could ask a question like this. So maybe you're talking about kind of the needs of the team and what's on the horizon, and you could ask a question like, you know, I actually recently read in Forbes that XYZ company is preparing to build a whole new product line as a result of the growth of the Internet of Things. I thought the article was really interesting, but I do have one question about that. Like, with your sensor technology, what are you planning to do about that? So you can kind of weave it in like that. If you read something and it prompted a thought, that's probably the best way to go about that, because it doesn't look like you're weirdly announcing that you read an article, but you're asking for some clarification or additional detail around something that you discovered and found interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. I've used that one too, like just bringing up something that I heard or read about, and that led the conversation in a really good way and had a really good interview. Another one, maybe, do you have any resources for mock interviews? Anything that you can think of?
You know, there actually is. This isn't mock interview per se. Here's a good resource for mock interviews. Get a friend who will do like a Zoom call with you or something, and record it, because you can record on Zoom. So then you can watch it. And this assumes so many first interviews, especially are virtual these days. You can watch how you do, which is equal parts painful and helpful. But there is another LinkedIn Learning course called Expert Tips for Common Interview Questions. And I was just one part of that course, but what they did was they had various career experts and also some LinkedIn executives present different questions that are super common, like to tell me about yourself or tell me about your greatest weakness. And then we talk about, here's why they ask you this question. Here's a framework I would suggest for answering this question. And then we had actors that came on who were the job seekers, and they would answer the question. And then the expert would come back on and say, here's what I liked about that answer, or I wish he would have talked about da, 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 da. So anyway, that was actually a fun project, and that course gets a lot of great feedback. So that might be helpful for anyone preparing for an interview too.
Definitely. I'll make sure to include that in the follow-up email.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, another question about interviews. You mentioned treat it like a conversation, but sometimes you're kind of in your head, right? About
Yes.
what, is my body language good? Am I wearing the right things? So kind of in how do you relax yourself, sort of? Maybe any tips when you find that maybe you're speaking too fast, or the nerves start to settle in?
Yep.
What can you offer us for just to relax? We've noticed we're going a little, getting into our head.
Clearly deep breaths, but if you're in the middle of it and you realize, oh my gosh, my mouth is just this runaway train right now and I'm freaking out because I can't stop it. Just again, remember that they're human. So you could always just kind of stop and laugh and just say, okay, I'm really excited about this. I'm a little bit nervous. Would you be okay if I start my answer over? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Acknowledging like that you're nervous, acknowledging that I know I'm talking really fast. I'm going to try and slow it down. I'm excited about this. So please, forgive me. I'm going to take a deep breath and let's continue.
Good advice.
And then getting too much in your head, that's the thing. It's so there's kind of a fine line between being underprepared and way super over-prepared. So underprepared is obvious. Don't do that. But over-prepared is if you spend hours and hours and hours memorizing every possible answer that you could give, because then it's going to make it really hard for you to have a genuine conversation, because you're going to be just sitting there waiting for them to ask that question so that you can answer it in the exact way that you memorized, and it becomes much harder. So kind of get your stories together. Know that if, like my pinball machine story, I might know that that's the story I want to tell when they ask me that. Maybe I don't, but I'm not going to have every line of it memorized, because I don't want to come across as a robot. They want to hire a person. If they want to hire a robot, they just buy robots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of in line with keeping it organic. Definitely. So now let's look at some questions about the prep that you mentioned, getting your statement of intention. So this is, you mentioned having people looking out for you. So how would you keep in contact with someone? This question is, I had a professor who I loved. All his classes were great. However, it's outside what I'm looking for in terms of job searching. How do I think he'd be great as a reference, but I don't know how to approach that? Any advice?
Okay, so you're saying the professor is awesome, but not specific to the field. Well, we all have neighbors, we all have friends, we all have, someone like me, I've worked with clients in bazillion industries, and some of them I am very grateful to call friends now. And so if your professor is one of those people that seems to be well connected and enjoys making connections, I really love introducing people to people. Find those people in your life, whether that's a friend, a professor, a relative. Doesn't matter if they're in the same field as you. If they're one of those people that seems to know a lot of people and enjoys making those introductions, those can be incredibly valuable people. So with somebody like the professor, maybe you say, hey, I know you're not working, you're not a marketing professor, but I'm in the process of scheduling some informational interviews. And I wonder if there's anyone working in marketing communications that and think might be a good conversation, something like that.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I think it ties into some of the questions we had about people who maybe been out of the job force for a while, and maybe lost some of those contacts, tapping into those people that we think are unlikely. You never know who they know, you never know what they know. So that's really good advice.
Well, and if you assume somebody's unlikely to help you and therefore you don't ask them, then you already know the answer to that. They are not going to help you because you never asked them. So I'm kind of a big fortune favors the bold, but also strategic person. So if you ask 10 people for an informational interview, you are not going to get 10 informational interviews. I mean, you're just not. People are busy, or they didn't see your in-mail, I have 3 teenagers and a husband and a dog, and we care for my aging mother-in-law. And I mean, there's just a lot in my life. So I want to be as generous with my time as I can. But the reality is I can't say yes to every request. So if you ask 10 people and 2 say yes, that's not because, no one likes you or you're not worthy of their time. It's probably they don't have time, or they didn't see it, but you're still ahead of the game. If you get 2 out of 10, that's 20% ahead of if you ask 0 people.
Definitely. Can you talk a little bit more about studying patterns when analyzing top 5 job descriptions? And what do you mean by that?
So with the clients that we work for, like the resume writing clients, we always invite them to send 3 to 5 job descriptions that they feel excited about, that they feel are representative of the type of role that they want to step into next. Obviously, something that's aligned with like a plausible job. I mean, I might want to be a medical doctor, but I can pull 5 medical doctor job descriptions and I'm not going to get one. But 5 job descriptions that you feel are really interesting and aligned with your background, and then review those and see what over and over again these jobs are asking for. So they might say it in a slightly different way, but they might say really strong people skills in one, and really strong negotiation skills in another, and really strong collaboration skills in another. But all in all, that they are looking for a person that is really great at, their interpersonal skills are really good. They're articulate and influential and blah, blah, blah. And so try and figure out those similarities, those themes, because then it can help you decide when you construct a summary section. So say, using that communication example, I'm going to want to make sure in my summary section that it's very clear that I am an articulate and engaging communicator, that I'm great at forging connections and building trust, whatever. And again, the resume makeover course that I referenced, it would make more sense as you go through it, because we go through it section by section. So
Great. So let's answer some of these resume questions. We have quite a few of those. What is the difference between key skills and summary? If you've already included key skills, in the summary section of the resume, should you remove it and list it separately, or list the key skills twice?
Well, if I'm introducing myself as an energetic, enthusiastic career coach with a career, or job search strategist with a career built around supporting professionals as they grow and develop their careers, and then I say I'm a strong problem solver with blah, 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 and so forth, What I haven't yet said is that I'm good at resume writing. I haven't said that I'm good at LinkedIn makeovers. I haven't said that I'm good at data analysis or project management. So those are the kinds of things I would put in the key skills section, where not necessarily going to be in the summary, but certainly you're going to see them in the job descriptions that you're gravitating towards. So and if I have like if they're looking for somebody with strong Excel skills, you could say expert Excel skills or something. Whereas in the summary section, I might say I'm really analytical and great at analyzing seeing the story behind the numbers or whatever, but I say in the skills section, advanced Excel skills or something like that.
Mhm. Great. Let me try to, for the sake of time, trying to get as many questions as possible.
sure.
Let me try to combine some of these questions from
Okay.
some of
Two
our
long
older
questions.
attendees who are maybe concerned about how to address work gaps. Maybe they took time off to help their aging parents, whatever the case may be, and now they're coming into a workforce that is requiring skills that they're not exactly sure how to even go about talking about, discussing, learning. So I guess maybe to sum it up, work gaps, how would you address that? How would you approach that either in the planning phase or maybe in the resume interview phase, if that makes sense?
Yep. So in and of themselves, career gaps are not a death sentence, if you will. I know people get really worried about them. And honestly, there are some recruiters that are just jerks about it, but there are plenty of people who aren't. And this is especially the case as we've been through COVID, because so many people lost their jobs through COVID or decided to stop working through COVID, needed to go care for somebody. So seeing a job gap on a resume now after that, it's very common. So that works in your favor. I always tell people, as absolutely unapologetic and succinct you can be about addressing it, the better. So I don't know how or why we're led to believe that we should somehow be apologetic about daring to take time off with family or moving across the country for 2 years to take care of our aging parent or whatever. Like, how on earth are we supposed to be, why on earth apologetic about that? Or should that be a disservice to our careers? So if you wonder or worry about something and think that the recruiter or the hiring manager is going to raise an eyebrow about it, assume that they will and go on the offense. And for something like a career gap, you could actually put something in your summary section or put something in the job you have now. Maybe you took 2 years off and you could say, following a planned sabbatical to care for a family member, accepted a role doing X, Y, and Z, or something like that. But the more succinct, unapologetic you can be about it and excited that you're now ready to move on, the better. And that goes for interviews as well. If someone's like, well, I noticed you were not, what were you doing between 2020 and 2022, Jenny? And I could say, well, you know what, my mom got really ill, which was not in the plans, but I had to go back and forth to Michigan several times to care for her up until a point she had a major surgery, and then the aftercare, which I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity, even though it was super stressful. I had that time spent with my mom. Happy to tell you she's doing great now, and I'm excited to be moving forward. And I think this would be a great next job for me. So you notice that I'm not like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm supposed to feel bad that I took 2 years off. No, it was like, here's the reality. This is what I gained from it. Ready to move on. And then in terms of antiquated skills, I think if you've been off for some time, get your buns into some online learning. someone told me that the LA County Library offers free access to LinkedIn Learning, where there are nearly 20,000 courses on any topic you can imagine. And so if you know that your skills are antiquated, say you were a graphic designer 20 years ago and now want to get back into it, well, I would start taking some InDesign classes online, and then you can at least put it on your resume and show that you are proactively taking steps to bring yourself to current.
Really great advice. We are nearing the end of our time. So, if we have maybe time for one more question, and maybe this would be a good one to end on. So it's particular to the LA area, but I think it could help anybody anywhere, is if you are trying to break into your dream job or industry, but you're running out of money, and you kind of talked a little bit about that. How would you suggest navigating, having your job plan, applying for jobs to pay the rent, the bills, while you're still trying to break into your dream job or your industry, and trying to keep up with your plan and keep the motivation going?
Yeah, that can be hard. Take your vitamins for sure, get some sleep. I mean, it can be really hard. So if you are able in your current job, or maybe you transition into another right now job, if you can be in a job that is like not super emotionally or physically taxing, so that you have some reserves of time and energy, mental energy and physical energy left to spend after hours time on your job search, that's really helpful. So maybe if you're in a job that you hate, and it's draining the life out of you, and you really want to shift into doing something else, it might make sense to find kind of a bridge job where you can catch your breath a little. I mean, do the work, but not give everything and then some to a job that you're planning to leave anyway. That's one way to go about it. And then the second is, and this is something that is what we talked about the whole day today, is work smartly. So have a plan, sit down maybe on a Sunday night and be like, okay, I've got an hour on Tuesday night, I've got 2 hours on Thursday morning, and then I have a few hours on Saturday. That's all I have. So what exactly are you going to assign to yourself to do in those blocks of time so that you're using that time effectively?
Really great advice, everybody. Take care of yourselves while you're out there, and listen to Jenny and watch this recording again. It's going to be on our YouTube channel in the next few days, as well as all of the information that we shared. I want to thank Jenny so much for your time and your advice.
Oh gosh, of course. This I could talk all day on this.
Yeah, and definitely we still have some questions going, but obviously want to be respectful of your time and our audience's time. Sorry everybody, we couldn't get to your questions, but definitely check out those resources that Jenny mentioned. LinkedIn Learning, take advantage of that resource as well, and take advantage of Work Ready. And our next program will be on Tuesday, October 18th at 11 a.m. and it will be Acing the Job Interview. After a resume and cover letter, the next step is getting the job. Corporate interviewer and inspirational speaker Christy Dimitrakis will teach you how to prepare for and nail the interview and negotiate the offer. So I'm going to post the link to this in the chat. It will also be on the follow-up email. And then I'm also going to post a post-event survey so that you can let us know how we did, if this was helpful to you, and any new programs that you would like to see in the future, so we can do our best to bring in speakers so that they can talk about those. And with that, once again, Jenny, thank you so much.
Yes, great to be here, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Yes, everybody, enjoy your day, drink water, stay cool, and we'll see you next time.
All right, take care.
Bye, everyone.